here's what it says. During the time, and I just did some research, during the time of the New Testament, Jerusalem was under the Roman occupation. The Roman money was in common use. The Jewish authorities, however, required that only the Hebrew money was acceptable payment for the temple tax. So money changers were allowed to set up tables and benches in the temple. The word benches here is where they derive the word banks. That's where the word banks come from. The bank started in the church, but for the wrong reason. Jesus enters the temple, and he sees that everybody in there is trying to make a dollar. I'm talking about everybody up in there. You had a row of tables, exchangers begging people, hey. They're giving you 75 cents, but I give you $1. Come over here. Come over here. Now, another thing happens. Now, in order to pay taxes, you had to pay with Jewish money. But in order to come into the temple during the time of a meeting, you had to offer up sacrifices. So you had to purchase your doves. So they turned dove selling into big business. So folks in the church selling doves, trying to make $1. And they're doing it so much that you got lines of people trying to go to the cheapest dove sellers. You got lines of people trying to connive and swindle you out of your money. And even you who's trying to, you're trying to say, wait, how much you gonna give me for this? How much you gonna give me for that? Now, how much you gonna give me for this? And they spend hours after hours competing, negotiating, shopping in the temple. Jesus shows up and nobody noticed. The king shows up and nobody noticed. He happily goes to his house and nobody noticed that he's there. It gets so bad until everybody is talking, but nobody is talking to him. I feel like preaching now. Somebody go wake up. Everybody in the church is texting. We sure been here a long time. But not one time have you said anything worth talking about to God. Watch this. And then I said, Lord, show me again. He said, I come to my house. Notice what he said. He said, my house. Watch this. He said, he didn't call it your church. He didn't call it your cathedral. He didn't call it your temple. He called it my house. He said, I came to my house and y'all talking to everybody else but me. Oh, I said, oh God, what are you saying? He said, I came to my house and I called it a particular thing. I called it the house of prayer. Now, prayer is the exchange of words between God and man. He said there was so much going on in the church that nobody had time to talk to me. Ooh, God. He said nobody had time to talk to me. He said I went all through folks, and everybody was trying to make $1. Everybody was trying to fix things going on in their house. What you cook? I got to go home because I left my roast on. I didn't know we were going to be in church this long. So I got to get home. I got something to do. I got an appointment I got to go to. And God said, you ain't saying nothing to me. You said absolutely nothing. In fact, you came to church. This is one of the things that drove me to this message. He said, oftentimes we establish prayer. He said, how many times, I don't know, don't nobody raise your hand. But how many times have you come to prayer but didn't pray. Oh, I got to talk to some people right now. How many times did you come in my house? You sat on my furniture, but you never said a word to me. In fact, you watch everybody else walking. You play with the babies. You play with other folks' children. You were laughing. You was handling stuff. You were handling money. You were looking at materials. How many, don't raise your hand. You did everything but talk to me. You exchanged numbers with folks. You told everybody how your week was in prayer. In fact, some of us deliberately showed up late so that we couldn't pray because we don't like to. Watch this. Then God began to say this. He said, do you know that prayer is the exchanging of words between you and I? He said, I came in the garden one day looking to talk to a man who hid himself from me. The Bible says Jesus walked. Adam heard the voice of God walking through the garden at the cool of the day. And he hid himself, Adam. And he said, Adam, where are you? Isn't it amazing how God comes to church looking for an exchange and can't find nobody? I got a lot of folks doing a lot of things. Oh, I see you doing a lot of stuff. But nobody has never stopped to really spend any time. Everything is so important. I got to collect the fans. I got to fold the sheets. I got to do this. I got to do this. I got to print this out. I got to go back there and do that. I got to do that. Sometimes you got to put time out on time out. Last statement, and I hope this just bless your whole life because it blessed mine. The Lord said, this is scripture. Y'all can help me complete it. For I know your thoughts. What did you say? That woman just said the word. I know your thoughts are far. Watch this. I know your thoughts are far off. In fact, I know your thoughts before you think them. Watch this. He knew the tree afar off, but still yet he came to it. I know your thoughts are far off, so much so that I can do it even before you think it. But I don't want to because I want to talk to you. But then the Lord told me in my studies, and I wrote this down. He said, what if I stop? Let me lay the picture. If the Lord knows our thoughts are far off, and he has done some things that we didn't even say out of our mouth, we were just thinking them, and he already did it. The Lord said, what happens if I stop reading your mind? And I don't move until you talk to me. Brother Johnson, what happens when he stopped reading your mind? And he said, if you don't say nothing, I'm not going to say nothing. Where would we be now if God said, if you don't do nothing, I'm not going to do nothing? And sometimes, this is why it really gets sweet to me. He said, because sometimes I have done things for you in a time period that you didn't even know the hell that you were about to go through, but I stepped in before you went through it to ensure that nothing will come against you. What if I allowed you to? I ain't gonna show up until it's too late. Why did I say too late? Because by the time you figure out you in hell, it's too. By the time you figured out that you just messed up, it's too. Watch this. It's like this for me. When he stopped you, many of you have this testimony. Before I got in the mess, he stopped me. But what happens when he doesn't stop you? He lets you go through it and receive the consequences of it. What happens is the very thing that you were thinking about, God didn't even intervene in your mind. Where would you be if every thought that you thought stayed with you and God didn't snatch it from you? Where would you be if everything that you needed from God, you didn't even know you needed, God said, you never asked? How many blessings would we have lost? How many jobs have... Some of us been in jail by now because had not God stopped you from going to the mall that day, you would have stole. I know you don't know nothing about it now. That's because he stopped you. No, I know y'all. What do you mean? Some of you, yeah. Some of you have been in the accident, in a coma by now. What do you mean? I wasn't even in the car. That's right, because he... Some of you have been dead by now, but you're still alive. When? It was him knowing your thoughts before you thought them and went into your future and took some thoughts out of your future so that when you got to your future, you only had the right things to think about. And then you start praying about the right. What if God just allowed you to be on your own? Then he says this. He turns over all the exchange tables. He turns over the doves tables. And he kicks everybody out. Then he does something that I don't even understand. He said, no walking in church. Watch this. The first thing y'all ain't read the book. He said he would not allow nobody to carry any vessels through the church. He shut some stuff down. Tell your neighbor, the next elevation of your life is going to come with a shutdown. What he's going to, I feel the Holy Ghost. He's going to stop some folks from carrying certain stuff in the church to get your attention. Y'all got to get this. Sometimes we get caught up with what other extracurricular activities are going on in the church, so you miss it. But some of us will say, Lord, shut it down. Don't let me see. Don't let nobody text me. Don't let nobody say, excuse me. God, shut it down. Tell them, go the other way. I was somebody up there. Because how many of you understand this? That some of the things you have missed in church that was vital for your future came because of distractions. What did he say? First of all, bring your own gum and chew it outside the temple. Stop asking me for gum in the middle. You're in the middle of getting your breakthrough, but somebody comes and tap you on your shoulders and asks you for a mint. God, can you please stop some stuff? I ain't got nobody. Do anybody know? I'm trying to get an exchange with you. I'm trying to give you what I desire, and you give me what you desire, and we trying to do an even swap, but I got distractions in the temple. Lord, I feel it now. Lord, can I think? Let me think about this. Silence every phone. It's just like your phone to go off in the middle of a word. God, fix my bladder. But here's what he's going to do for you. He's going to tell you, don't drink all that water before you come to church. Then he does something that is very intriguing. He lets no man enters the temple, and he retakes the temple. He says, my house is the house of prayer, but you stole from me. He said, you have made it a den. So that's people who practice stealing. Lord, when did I steal from you? When I came and you were too busy in the affairs of men. When it was time to worship me, that's when you wanted to take a break. When it was time to go forward, you had nothing to give me because you used up all your energy on some foolishness. Then I said, I'm closing with this. Jesus leaves the temple. He goes out the temple and he walks right back to the fig tree. And on the way, he passes the fig tree. He wasn't going to stop. The disciples sees it. Peter, I think, sees it. And it brings it back to his remembrance. He says, Lord, Master, the fig tree is dead. It's dried up from the roots. From the roots. The fig tree, in fact, watch this. How do you know the fig tree was dried up from the roots? Because this particular fig tree was so dried up, it literally fell over and exposed the roots. And I said, Lord, what are you trying to say? He said, I'm about to get deep into your life. I'm going to go down in the roots. Because there's some demonic things that's not seen in the church, that's lying underground. It's the reason why you're not producing what you should be producing. So I'm going to have to speak to the roots of your matter and dry them up. The Bible said he showed that he had power to curse the next generation. The next generation of things not like him. So what are you saying to me? He said, I'm speaking to the next generational devil that thought he was going to use this tree to fool somebody else. Oh, now it's going to get good. God, so is there some things in my life that's fooling people? So I show up for prayer, but I don't pray. Who am I fooling? Anybody? Don't raise your hand. You showed up, but you never talked. You talked to everybody, but how many people in here have ever came to prayer and you just sat there and just went through your phone? You just went through your phone. I'm here in prayer. God said, no exchange. So what if God overturns your table at your house? As I was traveling a man of God told me, he said, Pastor Levy, can I say something to you? He said, man, whatever you do, stay humble. And I said, sir, how do you stay humble? He said, get in a posture of prayer. Get in a posture of prayer. Because you're going to be successful, but you can be successful and not a prayer. And you can go to the highest level of success. But when God gets tired of you, he'll dry you up from your roots. And when you're dried up from your roots, there is no way that anything else go come out of you. Now, see, anybody know about plucking weeds or pulling weeds? When you pull a weed, you can break all the weeds from the ground. But if you never get the roots, that same weed is going to grow again. But if you get in the roots, prayer for me is about to get in my roots. Because there's some things that I'm covering up that prevents me from producing when I need to produce. See, it is easy to produce when you feel like it. But when you don't feel like it, you can't produce. And it's when you don't feel like it, it's when God shows up. And you have an excuse. And what if God said, you know what? That's it. From your roots, I curse you. That means your sons won't come. Y'all don't get this. Jonathan, that means your sons, your daughters, their sons and daughters won't come. The tree had no more potential. Pastor David, you would never read in the Bible that that tree produced another tree. What happens when God stops you and all the generations that you would produce? He stops you because you didn't produce when you should have produced. When he came to you, you had nothing to give him. You had everything else to give everybody else. You had your time for the game. You had your time for shopping. You had your time for eating. You had your time for gossiping. But when God showed up, you had nothing to give him. You made excuses why you couldn't pray.
Judah TV.